So, good day everyone. I am going to discuss the theories of crime causation. But before that, I am going to state some objectives here. So, at the end of this activity, you should be able, or we should be able to, number one, define the different types of theories and explain how it is important to criminology. Then, number two, formulate examples based on real life situation in different types of theories. And number three, we may able to find out the people behind or involved in different types of theories. So first, I am going to explain or I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Janema Vicente Palak. AB is criminology student under Mom Levy. I am in Block A. So, first, we are here in the classical theories of crime. So, what is the classical theories of crime? So, classical theories of crime is a product of the Enlightenment. In classical theory, human behavior, including criminal behavior, is motivated by a hedonistic rationality in which actors with the potential pleasure of an action against the possible pain associated with it. So, under the classical theory is the rational choice theory. So, what is the rational choice theory? So, it is an economic principle that states that individuals always make prudent and logical decisions. So, this decision provide people with the greatest benefit or satisfaction. So, to explain you furtherly, there is an example which is Mark wanted to buy in the mercado for their foods because the prices are low, while Nina wants to buy at Princeton because the products are good quality. So it is their rational choice to choose what they want for their own. So and the person involved in this rational choice theory is Adam Smith, which it is one of the first economists to develop the underlying principle of the rational choice theory. So that would explain the rational choice theory. Second is the routine activity theory. So to define it, it is a subfield of wrongdoing opportunity theory that concentrates on circumstances of violation. Like for example, cyberbullying. So people are more vulnerable when online. There's a lot of targets and there is no supervision. Another example to really explain well what is routine activity theory. So robbery at mall. So those who spend most of their time away from home tend to be more involved with the police. So that would explain the routine activity theory and there's an more opportunity to commit a crime because there is an opportunity. So you may able to execute a crime because there's an opportunity. So the person involved in this is Marcus Felson and Lawrence E. Cohen and later developed by Felson. So next is the lifestyle theory. So to explain what is lifestyle theory, so it holds that crime is a developmental process guided by an ongoing interaction between three variables, which is the incentive, opportunity, and choice. So this theory is that people may become crime victims because their lifestyle increases the exposure to criminal offenders. So let me have an example. So the example for this is going out at night alone. So that is the lifestyle theory. So people who are in high risk location and time. So that explains also the lifestyle theory. So the person involved in lifestyle theory is Michael Hendelang and Michael Gottfredson and James Garofalo. So Kennedy is also having contribution in lifestyle theory and Ford in 1990. So they summarize the lifestyle exposure and exposure model of lifestyle theory. Next is a general deterrence theory and a specific deterrence theory. So first, what is deterrence theory? So deterrence theory is a to prevent crime. Law must provide reasonable penalties that are applied in a reasonable fashion. So first, what is general deterrence theory? So it is refers to the effects of legal punishment on general public. Second is the specific deterrence theory. So, what does it mean? So, it is an individual who is caught and punished will not commit crime again because it is a type of punishment that is meant to discourage the future criminal behavior in a person being charged with a crime. So, to make it simple, general deterrence is related or foresee the effects of a crime committed. So it could gonna it based on what would be effect into the public. But when we say a specific death sentence theory, muna kaning mga kanang potential crimes nga mahadlok na sila og buhat og crime because they are afraid of some punishment nga gina ginahatag sa mga police or what kind ever na related sa mga crime doer potential. So next is example. To make it clear, to make it simple, let's have an example. So general deterrence first. So Kobe is afraid of breaking the law because he is afraid of the consequences that come when he breaks the law. So in a specific deterrence, an armed robber receives a harsh sentence of 8 years in prison. So he will be less likely to commit armed robbery again when he eventually gets out. So in general deterrence theory, they are afraid of the consequences that come when they break the law. But in a specific deterrence, those kanang future kanang mga criminal na naka-receive ng punishment is na possibility nga dili na sila mag-commit og another crime again because they are afraid nga mautulong sa ito nga punishment nga ilang na experience. So that would definitely explain what is the general and specific deterrence theory. So there are two people involved in this. So the first is the Cesare Beccaria and second is Jeremy Bentham. These are two Enlightenment philosophers who created the conceptual foundation for lethal deterrence and rational choice theory. So next is the incapacitation theory. So what is incapacitation theory? So it is a prevention of crime on how you detain the person to prevent the crime. So in incapacitation theory, it argues that reductions in crime rates are achieved through higher imprisonment rates since the offender cannot commit new crimes while incarcerated. So example, to make it clear. So house arrest and execution pursuant to death penalty. That is example of incapacitation theory. So the person involved in this, sorry to tell you, but I didn't see some in the research who is the person involved in this. But I write here that the person involved in this is the California's youth because the past 2 decades, they offer a rare opportunity to examine the impact of incapacitation theory. So I guess they're also a person involved in this, and they are also important in the study of incapacitation theory. So next is the psychological theories of crime causation. We are here in the second part. First is the classical theory, and now is the psychological theories of crime causation. So first we are going to define what it means. So it states that criminal behavior is the product of unconscious mind, forces operating with a person's mind, are usually developmental, attempting to explain the development of offending from childhood to adulthood. So it hints based on longitudinal studies that follow up individuals over time. So under this, we have the psychodynamic theories and psychosexual stages of human development. So we are going to define this first. So it is known as a psychoanalytic psychotherapy that helps the clients understand their emotion and unconscious patterns of behavior. So human personality contains three major, namely ID, ego, and superego. So did you already know this? So first is the ID. It is the needs of desires, which is the operates under pleasure principle. Second is the superego, which the counteracts the ID by fostering feelings of morality. It is a conscience and ego ideal. So third is the ego, and it evaluates the reality of a position of these two extremes. It is the reality principle. So when you say ID, it operates the under pleasure principle. When we say superego, it operates morality principle. But when we say ego, it is a reality principle. So that could explain the difference components. So we have an example. So a childhood incident that caused fear in the past may trigger anxiety in adulthood. So another example, Abby has a behavior, or she is oftenly obsessed with hand washing because it may be linked to her childhood trauma in the past. So that would explain. So we are here in psychosexual stages of human development. So we already discussed the psychodynamic theory. So now we are going to discuss the psychosexual stages of human development. So to define it, it is a relating to mental, emotional, and behavioral aspect of sexual development, or relating to mental or emotional attitudes concerning sexual activity. So oral stage, they are under the birth to 1 year old. So Paulic stage, they're 3 to 6 years old. Anal stage 1 to 3 years old, then latency stage 6 to puberty, and genital stage is the puberty to adult. So example, in oral stages, infants achieve gratification through oral activities such as feeding, thumb, sucking, and bubbling. Like yung mga baby natin na yung kanang mahilig na kagatin yung mga labi nila and yung mga thumb nila. Yun yung mga kasagaran natong makikita sa mga baby. So when we say anal stage, child learns to respond to some demands of the society, like they learn bladder control and go to comfort room to poop. So in anal stage, yung mga kabataan na under 1 to 3 years old is marunong nang mag-response. Like kung natatai sila, so madadirect na sa isipan nila na pupunta sila sa CR. Like another example, gutom sila, so magdadirect na sa isip nila na kailangan nilang kumain. So in Paulic stages, which is the 3 to 6 years old, so the children learn to understand the difference between male and females and became aware of their sexuality. So in Paulic stages, aware na sila na kung babae sila or lalaki sila. So kung ano ang nararapat na suotin nila, pambabae ba or panlalaki, kasi aware na sila sa kanilang sexualidad. So when it comes to latency stages, the child continues his or her development, but sexual urges are relatively quiet. And genital stage, growing adolescence, gaining sexual pleasure, primarily from kissing and oral sex, rather than sexual intercourse. So the person involved in this is the Viennese psychiatrist Sigmund Freud. In 1856 to 1939, it is considered as one of the prominent theories in psychology. So third is behavior theory. Behavioral theory. So it is a theory of learning which states all behavior are learned through interaction with the environment and through a process called conditioning. So example, Miss Palak rewards their class or certain students with a party or special treats at the school or in his students because it their students is showing a good behavior throughout the week. On the other side, Mr. Guanco punished her students by giving tasks and taking away certain privileges because of misbehaving. So that would the example of the behavioral theory. So the person involved in this is original created by John B. Watson and popularized by Brutus Frederick Skinner, commonly known as B.F. Skinner. So we are here now in social learning theory. So it suggests that social behavior is learned by observing and imitating that behavior of others. Like for example, Nino is used to hurting his classmates or to hurt his classmates because he is always the instigator of trouble at school, and he is always bullying his classmates because he grew up always seeing his father hurting his mother. Every day he sees his parents fighting that triggers him to do the same thing to his classmates. In this case, Nino tends to commit any violent act because of social learning, which he always sees in his parents fighting. So Nino is kanang na-inherit niya ang mga ginagawa ng kanyang magulang, kaya ginagawa rin niya sa kanyang mga classmates. So, sa mga ganyang pagkakataon, may mga ang social factors talaga ang nakakaapekto sa individual na makakommit ng crime. Like, for example, nakikita mo sa mga tao na ginagawa nilang manakit ng ibang tao, like physical violence or sinasaktan nila. So, ikaw na namulat ka sa ganyang community o namulat ka sa ganyang klase ng pamumuhay is may possibility na ma-adapt mo ang kanilang mga ginagawa. So the person involved in this is Albert S. Bandura in 1973. Next is the cognitive theory. It studies the perception of reality and the mental process required to understand the world we live in. So it is an approach to psychology that attempts to explain human behavior by understanding the thought process. Example for that is Anna undergoes any process learning how to do a new math problem for the first time. So that would explain the cognitive theory. It is a mental process na magpaprocess ang inyong isipan kung ano ang dapat gawin, kung ano ang mga hakbang na gagawin mo para masolve ang isang problem. So the person involved in this is the most significant contributor in this theory is Jean Piaget. I don't know how to pronounce. Also Ulrich Nisser, Noam Chomsky, Jean Piaget, and Lev Vygotsky are the people who are mainly involved in this cognitive theory. So we are here in moral development theory. So it suggests that people who obey the law simply to avoid punishment or who have outlooks mainly characterized by self-interest are more likely to commit crimes than those who view that the law or something that benefits of all society and who honor the rights of others. So example, level 1, they pre-conventional, younger than 6 years old. So step 1, punishment and obedience, orientation. They obey rules to avoid punishment. Step 2, naive hedonism, conforms to get rewards and to have favors returned. So level 2, conventional level, 7 to 11 years old. So step 3, good boy or good girl, morality. It confirms to avoid disapproval or dislike by others. Step 4, it confirms to avoid censures by authority. Level 3, post-conventional, 11 years old above. So step 5, there confirms to maintain communities and emphasis on individual rights. So in step 6, individual principle of conscience. So the person involved in this is Lawrence Kohlberg in 1973, and it was expanded by Paget's theory and applied the concept of development stages to issues in criminology. So his theory of moral development was dependent on the thinking of the former and American philosopher John Dewey. So we are here in the intergenerational transmission theory. So it refers to the transfer of individual abilities, traits, behaviors, and outcomes from parents to their children. Example, a father having a child maltreatment to his son, and when he grow up, there's a possibility that his son will adopt the kind of behavior when he has his own children. So I already explained it that this future criminal can be a possible crime doer, or there are the possible that they can commit crime because of the social factors that makikita nila sa ibang tao na mga gumagawa ng krimen is ma-adapt nila sa kanilang sarili. So the person involved in this is William Grove, and his colleagues found that heritability was 41% for childhood conduct disorder and 28% for adult antisocial personality disorder. Also, the person involved in this is David Rowe. Then that he argued that genetic influence should always be estimated in studying the links between family factors and delinquency. Next is the alternative theory. So it beats the famous saying, opposite charges attract. So it focuses on assortative mating. Female offenders tend to cohabit with or get married to male offenders. Like for example, Nina is a policewoman assigned in Hingaog City Police Station. Because she was always with Lino at work, he was eventually attractive to, and he fell in love with him. So the criminal offenders possibly attract or get involved in the same personality and behavior of other criminal offenders. So the person involved in this is Robert F. Krueger, and his colleagues found that sexual partners tended to be similar in their self-reported antisocial behavior. So next is the differential association reinforcement theory. So it explains that criminal behavior is learned by the reinforcement we receive after committing deviant behavior. So like for example, Jonathan is exposed to repeated criminal scenario. So this scenario will eventually rub off on others nearby. So the differential association theory can differ in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. So the person involved in this is Ernest Burgess and Ronald Akers in 1966, combined with Bandura's social learning theory and Sutherland's theory of differential associations. So next is insects conditioning theory. So it's studies that shows that antisocial behavior is remarkably consistent over time, or to be more precise, the relative ordering of individuals is remarkably consistent over time. It was said by Roberts and Del Vecchio. So the person involved in this is Hans Insects from his last name, and the theory and personality questionnaires. So insects viewed offending as natural and even rational, on the assumption that human beings were hedonistic, sought pleasure, and avoided pain. So in integrated theory, they predatory street crime by showing how human nature develops from the interplay of psychological, biological, and social factors. So it attempts to bridge the ideological differences that exist among various older theories of crime by integrating variables from disparate theoretical approaches. So example for this is the Marcus has a family of thieves, and because of poverty, he tends to commit a crime in which he robbed the grocery store. So person involved is James Q. Wilson and Richard Herrnstein. Next is the maternal deprivation and attachment theory. So the maternal deprivation definition is the most important phenomenon to social development takes place after the birth of any mammal, and that is the construction of an emotional bond between the infant and his mother. While in attachment theory definition, child development depends on his or her attachment between their primary caregiver. So the example for this is a child separated from his mother and abandoned by her. So that leads to anxious attachment result of having trust issues with others and having no good relationship with people. So because naranasan niyang ma-abandoned is wala na siyang trust sa ibang tao, is makakabuo na siya ng boundaries between her or his two people. So the person involved in this is the British psychiatrist Edward John B. Bowlby. So the third theories of crime causation is the sociological theories of crime causation. The definition of this is it states that the cause of why crimes rates have increased in every rural and rural society is because of social phenomenon, such as social structure theories, social disorganization theories, strain theories, and cultural deviance theories. So, ang dahilan kung bakit nag-i-increase ang crime ay dahil daw sa sociological theories of crime causation. So, the social disorganization theory, it is a theory that views crime-ridden neighborhoods as those in which residents are trying to live at the earliest opportunity. So residents during this time are not interested anymore when it comes to community matters. So like example, Alan grew up in a squatter area in Tondo, so he realized that the people around here were used to chows and living a bad life, so he adopted it because the people around him could also commit crimes as thieves. So, mga social factors talaga ang minsan nag-trigger na sa mga tao na gumawa ng crime. Kung namulat ka sa komunidad na ang bawat isa ay sanay na gumawa ng crime, so could possibly na ma-adapt mo at ma-inherit mo na gagawa ka rin ng criminal kagaya ng iyong mga nakilakihan ng mga tao. So the person involved in this is Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay. So next is the concentric zone theory. So it took about 5 concentric circles or zones where there were stable and significant difference in interzone crime rates. So Zone 1, the central business district, mga taong workaholic. So in zone 2, zone in transition. Zone 3, working class homes. Zone 4, working class homes also. And Zone 5, the commuter zone. So examples. Downtown is a business area or the outskirts of town. Might be the suburbs where working class homes are. So the person involved in this is Ernest W. Burgess and Robert E. Park in 1923. So we are here in anomy theory. So it is societal normless, which social group or individual having interaction with each other. When there are no rules and regulations, people became limitless and uncontrollable. So, itong mga taong to, dahil namulat sila na walang rules, na walang law na fina-follow, so, limitless sila ka na. Kahit saan, gagawa sila ng crime kasi walang makakapigil sa kanila. So, example, if society does not provide enough job that pay a living wage so that people can do work to survive, many will turn to criminal methods of earning a living. So, dahil sa mga taong pinagkaitan ng kanang treatment na kanang fair dapat na magsweldo or dapat sapat ang kanilang binibigay na sweldo. So, ito magti-trigger sa kanila na gumawa ng crime. Minamagtrato nyo kami. Igagawa kami ng crime. So, person involved in this, it was introduced by the French sociologist David Emile Durkheim in his study of suicide. So next is the strain theory. So this theory explained that certain strains or stressors increase the likelihood of crime. It argues that people engage in deviant behavior when they cannot achieve socially approved goals by legitimate means. So example, Patrick is experiencing chronic unemployment. So he got fired by his boss because he cannot do his job well. In that case, Patrick may engage in theft or drug selling to obtain money. So it seeks revenge against the person who fired them, which is his boss. So the person involved in this is Emile Durkheim. So he developed the first modern strain theory of crime causation and deviance, but Merton's classic strain theory and its offshoots came to dominate criminology during the middle part of the 20th century. So, next is the relative deprivation theory. So, it defined by the social theorists and political scientists. Relative deprivation theory suggests that people who feel they are being deprived of something considered essential in their society. So for example, when you can only afford a cheap product or your house is just simple, but your neighbor has a big house with luxury cars and bugs, you feel relatively deprived. So mafe-feel mo na pinagkaitan ka ng mundo dahil ikaw naghihirap pero yung ibang tao nagpapakasarap sa kanilang kayamanan. So that will explain the relative deprivation theory. So the person involved in this is Walter Runciman, is a father of relative deprivation theory history. So next is the general strain theory. So the part of the social structure theories of crime, which fit the positivist mode in that they contend that these social forces push or influence people to commit crime. Like for example, Lino is a criminology top-notcher in board exam, but because of high requirement, he may not be able to get hired easily and wait for the approval of height waiver. On the other hand, his classmates who took the board exam twice was easily get hired because his classmate's father was in high position in the police office. When Lino heard his news, he felt mad, stressed, and frustrated. So may mga pagkakataon talaga na ganyan na maisip mo na ang unfair ng mundo. So, the person involved in this is Robert Agnew. He reformulated the strain theory of Robert Merton. So next is the cultural deviance theory. So it combines the effect of social disorganization and strain to explain how people living in deteriorated neighborhoods to react on social isolation and economic deprivation, and suggested conformity to the prevailing cultural norms or lower class society causes crime. So example, the Cruz family belongs to lower class in which they are uneducated and don't have any job. But because of the hardship of life, they are always in debt and carry the window weekly in markets so that Mr. Cruz engage himself in illegal activities like gambling and thief along with other low class people. So ito talaga yung mga low class is makakaisip talaga sila ng gumawa ng mali. Kasi dahil sa kahirapan, dahil sa kulang na pangangailangan, so makakagawa sila ng mga crime like gambling. Kasi yun lang naisip na paraan para mapunan na kanilang pang-araw-araw na pangangailangan. So the person involved in this is Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay. They developed a theory that has been called both social disorganization theory and cultural deviance theory. So next is the delinquent subcultural theory. So these terms, criminal or delinquent subcultures, denote system of norms, values, or interests that support criminal or delinquent behavior. So like for example, when youth in a community was belong to the lower class, they might feel that they deprive opportunities since they are not suitable enough to sustain the needs of society. So in that case, cultural conflict will arise. So when it happened, lower class youth might commit any criminal behavior against upper class. So the person involved in this is Albert Key, Cohen, Cloward, and Odlin. They present a theory of juvenile delinquency that builds on the work of Durkheim and Merton, and that focuses on the rule of high aspirations and low opportunity. Next is the differential opportunity theory. So the idea that people, especially teens, from low socioeconomic backgrounds who have few opportunities for success will use any means at their disposal to achieve success. Example, Leonardo grew up with enough income for his family, so he could not study because his family could not provide his needs. He tried to apply to a company as a janitor, but his income was still not enough, so he had a friend who offered him illegal work because he wanted to earn a lot of money. So he accepted it with no hesitation. So the person involved in this is Richard Cloward and Lloyd Allen, who worked Delinquency and Opportunity, written more than 50 years ago. So next is the thrift theory. So it also called the neutralization, a process of becoming a criminal as a learning experience. So example, during the exam, Shuga cheated on his exam by having a note on his palm and opening on his notes. He encouraged his seatmates to do the same thing. For Shuga, it is okay to cheat because their teacher isn't around. In that case, Shuga engaged in rule-breaking activity, but he negotiated his culpability or blame because he believes cheating is okay as long as he didn't caught by their teacher. So the person involved in this is Grisham Skies, and he's associated by David Matza. So we are here in the differential association theory. So people learn to become offenders from their environment. So through interactions with others, individuals learn their values, attitudes, methods, and motives for criminal behavior. So example, Suga and JK have been friends for a long time. So one day, Suga saw JK holding a lot of money and jewelry. So Suga asked where it came from. And JK answered was from his stolen one. So JK also convinced Suga to join in his group because he will make money like this. At first, Suga is still in doubt, and because he sees JK buying everything he wants by his money, he eventually accepts its offer. So it teaches how to do the things that JK. He thought Suga what things to keep in mind when they do it in a real scenario. So the person involved in differential association theory is Edwin Sutherland. He proposes that criminal behavior is learned. Criminal behavior ay natututunan sa ibang tao. So, we are here in containment theory, which is a series of external social factors and internal qualities effectively insulate certain individuals from criminal involvement, even when ecological variables induce others to engage in crime. So, example, Jiminy was invited by her friends to night camp and attend the party. She knows there are some drinks there, but she did not drink alcohol, and since she believed that her parents won't allow her to do that kind of activities, so she refused to go with her friends on camping. So she possessed an outer and inner contentment, which is her personal belief that she might not enjoy the party because she can drink alcohol, and her outer contentment that her parents will not allow her. That will explain the contentment theory, and the person involved in this it was proposed by Walter Reckless in 1940s to 1960s. So next is the social bond theory. So it is also called the social control theory. So all individuals are potential law violators. But they are kept under control because they fear that illegal action will damage their relationship with their friends, parents, neighborhood, and more. So example, you don't want the family of the person you love because they don't treat you so well. But because you love the person, you choose to be with them and go with the flow. So ito yung mga circumstances na kibali, it is a mag control sa yung mga negative behavior, like gumawa ng criminal dahil natatakot ka na baka i-judge ka ng tao, or natatakot ka na masisira yung relationship mo sa ibang tao dahil sa social bond theory. So, the person involved in this social bond theory is Travis Hershey in 1969. So, he is the one who created this type of theory. So, next is the social reaction or labeling theory. So, labeling theory possesses the self-identity, and the behavior of individuals may be determined or influenced by the terms used to describe or classify them. So example, if a person has many tattoos and a strong appearance, they have been labeled as a thief, or person might be suspicious, dangerous, troublemakers, uneducated, and have no respect. So kadalasan makikita natin ito sa mga tao. Ito yung kasabihan na don't judge the book by its cover. Kasi minsan, nililabel natin yung tao based sa kanilang physical appearance. Pag pangit, manluloko yan, magnanakaw yan. So, yun yung mga taong may ganong pag-iisip. Binabase nila ang behavior ng tao, karakter ng tao, sa kanilang nakikita sa panlabas. So, person involved in this it was developed and popularized by American sociologist Howard S. Becker and his 1963 book Outsiders. So, Second is the primary and secondary deviance. So the primary deviance refers to the violation of a norm or rule that does not result in the violators being stigmatized as deviant. So example, if a gang engage in primary deviant behavior such as acts of violence, dishonesty, or drug addiction, so subsequently move to legally deviant or criminal behavior such as murder, this will be the stage of secondary deviance, and the person involved in this is Edwin Lemert in 1951. So we are here now in the fourth theories of crime causation, which is the economic theories. So it defined as a expected gains from crime, less chance to be detected or arrested, and less chance to convicted were among the most identified factors. So first, under the economic model of crime behavior, the basic theory. So it emphasized the different factors that influence individual decisions to commit crime and different ways of combating crime. So example, as a supply of a good or service decrease and consumer demand persists, the price of it may skyrocket. In this case, the demand is greater than the supply. So that could explain the basic theories. So the person involved in this, it was formalized by Nobel laureate Gary Becker in 1968. So we are here in the Karl Marx theory. So the Marxism, it was a famous theory. The Marxism is a social, political, and economic theory originated by Karl Marx, which focuses on the struggle between capitalists and the working class. So, example, because of the unfair treatment and paying them the lowest wage, the working class rebels against the bourgeoisie or the businessman who sees control of the means of productions and abolishes capitalism. So ito yung mga tao na pinagkaitan ng maliit na sweldo dahil hindi sapat ang kinikita ng kumpanya or talagang unfair lang talaga ang mga businessman. Gusto nilang sarili ng pera. Kaya itong mga working class or yung mga nagtatrabaho is magre-rebel talaga. Pinaglalaban ang kanilang karapatan na dapat malaki ang kanilang sweldo na makakuha, pero hindi sila treat na gano'n. Maliit na sweldo lang ang kanilang nakukuha. So the person involved in this is of course the Karl Marx theory. So it was originated by Karl Marx. So next is the Friedrich Engels and William Bonger's theory. So William Bonger believes in a causal links between crime and economic and social conditions. So he asserted that crime is a social in origin and a normal response to prevailing cultural conditions. So example, because of the capitalist economy, it creates inequality and social division. So private ownership of capital enables firms to gain monopoly power in product and labor markets. So the person involved in this is William Bonger and Friedrich Engels, of course. So we are here in the 5 theories of crime causation, which is the biopsychosocial theories of crime causation. So it defined as a criminology and psychology is a multidisciplinary perspective that attempts to understand the criminal behavior related outcomes like antisocial behavior and its consequences. So by considering the interaction between biological, genetic hormones, physiology, brain structure, or functioning. So it is the biosocial theories. So when it comes to biopsychosocial models of crime causation, it incorporates the interaction between biological, psychological, and social factors to help determine why an individual might suffer from disorder. So example, in biological factors or biological model of crime, it explains how the person's genes are inherited from the family. Like, for example, if they have one criminal member of the family, it is likely to be inherited from the other family member. In psychology, personality disorder is also considered as a reason why some people having these illnesses can commit crime, because they will become delinquent and they cannot control it. In social factors, example, Abby is forced to do a crime because of peer pressure by her friends. To test her loyalty, her friends wanted to Abby to steal something so that she can be part of the group. So that would classify the different factors. So the person involved in this, the biopsychosocial approach, was developed at Rochester decades ago by Dr. George Angel and John Romano. So we are here in a moral insanity and criminal responsibility. So it is a type of mental disorder consisting of abnormal emotion and behaviors in the apparent absence of intellectual impairments, delusions, or hallucinations. So, example, Daniel has a mental disorder in which he wanders along the streets and sometimes he breaks things and often he shouts when he was irritated. So one day when he went to school, Jake bullied him and because of his condition, out of anger, he punched Jake and threw him down the stairs. In this case, people has more moral insanity tend to commit crime when they cannot control their emotion. So ito yung mga tao na may kulang sa pag-iisip na kapag na-trigger sila or kapag may nag-push sa kanila na gumawa ng crime is magagawa talaga nila yun kasi hindi nila makokontrol dahil sa kanilang condition. So the person involved of moral insanity is James Cole Pritchard. So next is the premenstrual syndrome. So it is a combination of symptoms that many women get about a week or two before their period. So example, Cheska has premenstrual syndrome. At the same time, they were fighting with her friend. Because of irritation, she slapped his friend and said hurtful words towards her. And the worst part, she threw a leaking object at her friends. So it hits her friend's head, so it was injured. So premenstrual syndrome may be effective as an affirmative defense to a criminal charge. So if Jessica can show that she was suffering from premenstrual syndrome at the time when the crime was committed, and because of her condition, either the criminal act was involuntary act. So may posibilidad na hindi ano yung crime, hindi magiging kanang big deal kasi may nararasan siyang premenstrual syndrome, which is a valid na reason yun. So the person involved in this is Robert T. Frank, which he titled The Hormonal Causes of Premenstrual Tension. So next is the battered child syndrome. So it is a disease in which children are physically abused. The battered child syndrome is a form of child abuse siya. So example, Larry has been traumatized after experiencing accidents where both of his parents died. So children experience physical neglect where parents are not providing the child with all of the basic necessities like food, clothing, and shelter. May different types of child abuse. So posible na kapag hindi mo napunan yung pangangailangan mo as magulang sa iyong anak. So child abuse siya kasi hindi mo ginagampanan yung responsibilidad mo bilang isang ina or isang ama sa iyong anak. So, pinapabayaan mo lang sila. So, it considered as a child abuse. So, person involved in 1962, Dr. Henry Kempe and his colleges were the first to recognize and identify child abuse and neglect in the defining paper, The Battered battered child syndrome. So next is the battered woman syndrome. So the battered woman syndrome is also known as the battered person syndrome. So it can be the product of a long-term domestic abuse. So battered woman syndrome is considered a subcategory of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. So it was written by Anna Gother. Like, for example, the person is in denial, unable to accept that they're being abused, or that they're justified as being just that once. So, that would battered woman syndrome, yung mga tao na nakaranas ng abuse. So, the person involved in this is Lenore Walker. So, she's a girl, right? What? Is the psychologist who coined the term battered woman syndrome in the late 1970s. So next is the postpartum stress syndrome and the postpartum psychosis. So first we are going to define what is the postpartum stress definition. So the postpartum means the time after childbirth. So most women get the baby blues or feel sad or empty within a few days of giving birth. So ito yung mga maman or mga kababaihan na kapag nanganak sila or before, after na manganak sila, makaka-feel sila ng postpartum, which is kawalan or may something na hindi pa nila tanggap or something na may kulang or marami silang iniisip. So, when we say postpartum psychosis, it defined as is a rare illness compared to the rates of postpartum depression or anxiety. So we have here the example. So in postpartum stress, example, when you feel like you don't love or care for your baby, you might have postpartum depression. So that is example. But in postpartum psychosis, it has an example of hallucination, like seeing or hearing things that aren't there. So paranoia and suspicious paranoid. The person involved is the author Deborah Fulgham Bruce, and it was medically reviewed by Caroline K. MD and written by Adam Philman, updated on September 29, 2020. So we are here in the last theories of crime causation, which is the political social conflict theories of crime causation. So first we are going to define it. So it characterized by their emphasis on social conflict and power relationship, focused on explaining variation in crime rates, and especially on the differing risk among class, racial, and other population sectors, so of being labeled as criminal. So first is under this theories is the Marxist criminology. So it is a crime as a function of the capitalist mode of production. Economic competitiveness is the essence of social life and controls the form and function of social institutions. So example, those capitalists who have the money that the working class have worked so hard for, they are the ones who benefit the most, while the working classes always work hard but nothing is blessed or get nothing. So in other words, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Ito talaga yung common na problema ng bansa. Yung mayayaman lalong mayaman, yung mahirap lalong naghihirap. So the person involved in this is Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. So next is the conflict theory. So the crime is the outcome of class struggle theory that society is in a state of perpetual conflict because of competition for limited resources. Example, wealthy people or the upper class who have a power to control the society, and they only have a privilege to enjoy the satisfaction of life, while people under middle class or lower class are suffering. So, ito yung sinasabi ko na Ang unfair ng mundo kasi may mga taong nagpapakasarap sa kanilang kayamanan, walang iba naman ay naghihirap at kuntinyong naghihirap. So the person involved in this theory, which is a conflict theory, is Karl Marx. It attributed by Karl Marx in 19th century. So, and also William A. Bonger, Ralph G. Dahrendorf, and George B. Vold adopted the conflict theory in criminology. So next is the social reality of crime. So the class that has the power to shape the enforcement and administration of criminal law. So example, Bombay Kudarat is a rich person who is running for city mayor. Because of his influential and wealth, he has a power to manipulate the government and a chance of winning because he has money to provide on people. He uses money to buy people's vote and he win at the end. Time flies, the people realize that he does not do anything to improve their city, yet he made himself more richer so that people creates violent behavior in which they protest against Bombay Kudarat. So, ito yung mga tao na example, tatakbo sila ng pagka-mayor dahil marami silang pera. Mapupunan nila yung pangangailangan ng mga tao. So, madali lang silang manalo kasi may pera sila. So, kadalas hindi naiisip ng mga tao na ano ang makakontribute niya sa ating lipunan, anong magagawa niya. Dahil may pera lang, bubuto tayo. Tapos, at the end of the day, pagsisisihan natin na, ay, sayang yung boto natin kasi wala naman siyang ginawa sa ating lipunan. At wala siyang na-contribute. Kaya, makakagawa tayo ng criminal behavior like, magpo-protest tayo, gagawa tayo ng mga fake news, sisiraan natin yung nakaupo sa gobyerno. Dahil hindi nila na provide yung mga pangangailangan ng mga tao. So the person involved in social reality of crime is Richard Kenny. Is a professor emeritus of sociology at Northern Illinois University. So next is the left realism. So left realism is just one political ideology that focuses on the causes of crime and deviance. So left realists believe that living in a capitalistic society, as in society where private entities control trade and industry instead of the state, is the main cause for crime. So example, a marginalized people does not have a voice in society, limiting their right to community, a feeling of inequality. So the person involved in this it was a perspective of Jack Young and John Leah, Roger Matthews, and Richard Kensi. Next is the postmodern theory. So modernism is the study of crime and criminals. It is based on an understanding of criminality. So it is a product of the use of power to limit the behavior. So example, as societies became modern and slowly changing, different groups, interests, and lifestyle are constantly changing. People used to commit crime in order to meet the demand and standard of society. So, ito yung mga tao na gagawa ng paraan para ma-relate or punan ang standard ng mga tao. Like, for example, yung iba na gagawa talaga ng paraan para makiuso. Magnanakaw na lang kasi gusto nilang ma-experience yung mga bagay na na-experience ng iba. Like, latest cellphone, iPhone. So, dahil yung iba walang pambili ng pera para sa iPhone. Kaya, nagagawa nilang gumawa ng crime. Like, magnanakaw sila sa ibang tao para lang mapunan nila yung pangangailangan lahat. Maka-provide sila or makasali sila sa standard ng society. Which kung anong uso, yun yung gagawin nila para makisabay sa uso. So the person involved in this postmodern is Jacques Derrida in 1930 to 2004. So next is the constitutive theory. So it is a crime as the application of harm to others. People committing criminal acts are at the same thing being made unequal or disrespectful. Example, poverty and is a constitutive element of a particular form of economic growth. So, common na to. Alam kong alam niyo na to. So, the person involved in this is Dragon Milovanovic and Stuart Henry, with also the contribution from Greg Barak and Bruce Arrego. So the constitutive criminology was introduced via Stuart Henrys. Next is the conservatism and liberalism theory. So it is a host of political views that favors free enterprise, so private ownership and socially traditional ideas. Liberal conservatism is a political ideology combining conservative policies with liberal stances. Example, in conservatism, killing someone is crime that must be held accountable because it is under the law, which is it is political belief that support emphasis on tradition, where we believe that murder is an immortality because only God has an ability to take life. But in liberalism, the best example of that is the same-sex marriage, in which people has a rational choice to know the right and wrong. They also know the consequences of their action in making choices, so it's constant of the governed and equality before the law. So it means that conservatism propose that they believes in God, so they assumes that all decisions was based on the God, which is the Ten Commandments. And also in liberalism, people has a rational choice to do what is wrong. People has a idea of what is wrong and what is right. So they believe that when they believe that it is right for them, so they make this possible in that way. So the person involved in this is Edmund Burke and philosopher John Locke. So next is the radicalism. So radical criminology is a conflict ideology which bases its perspective on crime and law in the belief that capitalist societies precipitate and define crime as the owners of the mean of production use their power to enact laws that will control working class and repress threats to the power of the ruling class. Example, in society, the opinions and behavior of people are extremely changing, especially in government. They tend to address different laws and rules. The Dove explained the radicalism, which is it has opinions of or the behaviors of people are extremely changing. So person involved in this is Charles James Fox and William Bonger in 1876 to 1940. So the last part of political social conflict theories of crime causation is the identity fusion theory. So the identity fusion theory is blending of an individual's personal self and social self with that group. Example, Diana wants to be a successful criminologist so that she needs to possess an identity fusion of a police, which is strong, mindful, brave, and more, so that she can be a successful police woman someday. So it could be na kung ano ang iyong example, kung ano yung trabaho na pinasukan, dapat pasok yung personalidad mo. Kung pulis ka, dapat strong ka or like matapang ka, matikas. Pag guro ka naman, dapat marunong kang makipag-communication, marunong kang makisama sa ibang tao, like friendly. So that would explain the identity fusion theory na makikibagay yung identity mo kung ano yung mga event na sinalihan mo or factors na napasokan mo. So, the person involved in this is William B. Swan Jr. and Michael D. Burmester. So that would explain the last part of political or social theories of crime causation. So that was the end of my presentation. So I think we discuss or we achieve the objectives from the different theories. What is the objective one again? So to define the different types of theories and explain how it is important to criminology. Check, because we define the different types of theory, we explain what is the meaning of that different types of theory. So number two, our objective is formulate examples based on real life situation. We achieve it also because I show you some different examples and different theories which connects the theories that we discuss. So third is to find out the people behind or involved in different theories. So we also achieve this third objective because I included those person involved at the bottom of every theories. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Bye bye.